guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks, and this week, effects pedals, gadgets and gizmos or gimmicks. Now, a few weeks back, I made a video taking a look at a brand new pedal board that I just put together and how, entirely through improper protection and packaging primarily on my part, it had become damaged in transit, moving from a festival that my band Cardinal Black was playing in Switzerland on a Friday night back to the UK for a festival we were playing the day after, about 15 hours later, in Kent. If there was a takeaway message from that video, it was that when travelling with your gear, it's not really possible to be too protective of it. You can't overdo it in that respect. But reading through the comments section, not only on the video itself, but on the article that Ultimate Guitar ran as a consequence of me uploading that video, there was a little bit of a prevailing train of thought, and that was my pedal board wouldn't have malfunctioned if I simply didn't use a pedal board. Now, admittedly, it's hard to kind of disagree with that logic too much, but amongst all of the other kind of hundreds of comments, it had a lot of views, that video, and elicited quite a large response. There were a few other kind of common themes, firstly among which was that the audience don't care. The audience doesn't notice what you're using. And secondly, rather more interestingly, that I'm too good a guitar player to be reliant or even using guitar effects pedals, which kind of got me thinking, is it cheating? Am I, whatever I tell myself, relying as a crutch on guitar pedals? After all, even a cursory Google search yields no end of results of infinitely bigger and better players than myself, espousing the benefits of ditching their pedal board and how doing so has made them a better player. It's a little bit of a conundrum. So, this week's episode is taking a look at effects pedals and whether ultimately those who use them are cheating ourselves, or even worse, cheating the audience. Now, something I found quite interesting to witness, especially with the sudden proliferation of incredibly high quality digital gear, the Helix, the Kemper, the Quad Cortex, is that for the most part, caveat, for the most part recently guitar players seem to have been split into two camps. Firstly, the progressives, those for the advancement of the instrument and its capabilities, and then secondly, those Luddites, the ones who simply are resentful of the fact you can't just plug into a Marshall Plexi anymore. Or, if you're looking at it from the other side of the coin, those that know however good the technology gets and however accurate the sound becomes, nothing can and ever will compare to the sensation of standing in front of a 4x12 speaker cabinet and feeling your trousers flap. Now, being born in 1991, I think it's probably fair to say that I'm very much of a generation who had a foot in both camps. Growing up, I aspired for nothing more than to own a Marshall half stack, and the day that I finally got my hands on one was a truly momentous occasion. But at the same time, in regard to YouTube and Friday Fretworks in particular, pretty much everything I've ever uploaded has been recording using digital gear, whether it's the Helix or whether it's Native Instruments guitar rig. A lot of my friends who are maybe 10 or 15 years on me are still somewhat skeptical about the idea of profilers or modelers or even digital gear in general, whereas a lot of the younger folks I've taught at the likes of BIM when I've been guest lecturer, 18, 19-year-olds, are still somewhat skeptical about the idea of why on earth anyone would actually use a guitar amp. It's very much a generational divide, and I think it's fair to say that my generation, for the most part, is the generation that bridges that gap. Live, I'm using loud, vintage Fender amplifiers, but on my pedalboard and at home recording, I'm using digital gear, multi-effects, IRs, amp sims, profilers, modelers, etc., etc. Whether it's by serendipity of my birth year or purely my outlook on life and my process of creating art, I've always felt that anything goes, and if there are no rules, then surely you can't really be considered to be cheating.
Don't you know? And yeah, and yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah,
Now my pedalboards, and to a degree my sound, especially within the context of Cardinal Black, has very much been formed around the use of specific effects for specific songs. For example, the Universal Audio Golden Reverberator, the plate reverb within that pedal for a track called On My Own, the one you just heard at the start of today's video, or the Mythos Golden Fleece Fuzz for the solo in Tell Me How It Feels, or the harmonic tremolo from the Line 6 HX Stomp for the rhythm parts in Warm Love. Specific effects for specific songs, and if I want to recreate those sounds live, I guess I kind of have to use those pedals, or if not those pedals, ones that do a very similar job. But if those who argue that the audience either doesn't care or just can't tell the difference between different effects pedals are correct, then is having a relatively complex pedalboard simply a waste of time? But first and foremost, I've absolutely no doubt that the audience neither care, or for the most part, 99 times out of 100, could identify the subtle differences between a Snouse Black Box, or an Analog Man King of Tone, or a Marshall Blues Breaker, or a TS-808, whatever it happens to be. But ultimately, I can, and it's my show. Without sounding like the big I am or the big cheese, it's my gig, it's my job, it's my professional pride when it comes to putting on a show, whether it's to a few hundred people or even a few thousand people, that as much as possible, every single person in that audience enjoys the show. And rightly or wrongly, a huge determining factor in that equation is whether or not I'm happy with my guitar sound on stage, and as such, whether I'm feeling inspired and enjoying the show. And that is what the audience will notice, whether or not it's because I'm using my preferred delay pedal or overdrive pedal, or because I'm wearing my lucky underpants. At that point, is surely irrelevant, as long as the people in the crowd, and myself, I guess to a degree, are enjoying the show. Could I get away with doing a Cardinal Black show plugged straight into the amp? Absolutely. I've spoken about it on numerous occasions, but in my youth I was a fully paid up/devotee, and as such, for the longest time my rig consisted of a Marshall JCM 800 and a Gibson Les Paul, maybe a wah-wah pedal if I was feeling adventurous, but as such, I did hundreds, if not thousands of gigs, where the only effect that I had access to was the volume control on my guitar. I'm extremely comfortable in that scenario, but that's not to say that I would want to do a Cardinal Black show like that. Could I? Yes. Would I want to? No. And ultimately, it's my gig, it's my choice. So what about those guitar players that espouse the benefits of ditching the pedalboard and how they feel that's made them a better guitar player? Or those who've been fairly vocally critical of those that they feel are over-reliant on the use of effects pedals? As I said earlier, as far as I'm concerned, it's art, and if there are no rules when it comes to making art, then surely you can't be considered to be cheating. But that said, I would be the first to admit that on occasion I feel uninspired with my pedalboard and the sounds it makes or the sounds I can get out of it, and comparatively, plugging directly into an amp is the most inspiring, liberating sensation that you can possibly have. To draw a parallel with the art world for a sec, look at an artist like Picasso and his hyper-realistic early work. Compare that to the somewhat abstract cubism of his later work. It's a change of medium ultimately, and there is a hell of a lot to be said for that. And plugging directly into an amp, as I said, can be incredibly freeing. But I think Joe Bonamassa's argument in that 2017 article was that not every musician can do that. And yes, there is a hell of a lot to be said for just being able to play your guitar, sitting down with an acoustic guitar and being able to get the most out of it. But I think where myself and Joe would probably have slightly different opinions, and again, whether this is by virtue of my birth year, is that I don't really think it matters, to be honest. I guess it depends ultimately on what type of guitar player you want to be. If you want Danny Gatton or Roy Buchanan levels of flexibility or versatility or, virtuosity, then yes, get a Telecaster and a Deluxe Reverb and make that your rig and learn how to get everything that you would ever want or need from that rig. But by comparison, if you want Kevin Shields or Edge levels of epicness, then yeah, get another car that you need to carry around your rig. Both types of setups, whether it's extensive or incredibly minimal, have been responsible for some truly beautiful music. As I said, I kind of feel like anything goes. When Jimi Hendrix took to the stage at Woodstock in 1969, down at his feet he had a Vox wah-wah pedal, a Dallas Arbiter fuzz face, and a Shinee Univibe. Yes, a fairly kind of stripped-back setup, I guess, by today's standards, but by 1969 standards, I think I'm right in saying that that was every type of effect. Yes, not every effect, but every type of effect that at that point had been condensed down to pedal form. Jimi Hendrix in 1969 was using the world's most extensive, most technologically advanced pedal boards at possibly the most iconic gig of all time. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that Hendrix was cheating at Woodstock. I'm going to play you out now, but as ever, thank you very much for watching. I'm Chris Buck, this is Friday Fretworks. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week, I'm not on holiday, for another episode. Cheers guys, see you soon.